Today I had an appointment where I got finger splints for my hands, particularly my thumb joints, and I thought that as part of documenting my chronic health journey, I would talk a little bit about it and how I got to this point and what the finger splints are like and what happened and all of that. So the place that I ended up getting the splints from is from the Silver Ring Splint Company, and they make different types of like supports and rings for people with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And I ended up getting these because my physical therapist that I was seeing for my jaw, for my TMJ issues, I was having a lot of problems with popping and clicking and cracking and my jaw getting stuck and all that goes along with hypermobility in that area. Um, that physical therapist was looking over different joints of mine and looked at my hands and said that she wanted to refer me to a hand physical therapist to get splints for my thumbs because if I didn't, it wasn't going to be good. And I knew that and, could sense that myself over the last couple of years, especially this joint. I was noticing that I was having problems increasingly with when I would go to push buttons on like the blender, or if I lifted something with this hand, this joint right here felt like it was very loose, like it was just going to dislocate. I often was experiencing pain in this area and just had this sense that if I don't get some kind of help for it or support for it, that within the next 5 years, I'm probably not going to be able to use that joint, or I'm going to be in some kind of like really, really bad pain. Um, so I was happy that, the physical therapist for the TMJ caught that and decided to send me over to this other physical therapist. So I went to the hand physical therapist, I want to say like a few weeks ago, and she had taken little plastic, like sizing rings to try to see what would best fit my fingers. And as she was sizing the rings, she was trying to have me relax my joints and my fingers. And she just said, "Oh my gosh, you are really loose in your joints." And she had fit me for the rings and told me to come back in a couple weeks when they come in. So today was the day, and I went there to go and pick them up. And she went to try them on me. And again, she just said, "Oh my gosh, I cannot believe that you went this long without being diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos. You are very, very loose in these areas, and you definitely need these." So she ended up ordering one for each hand. This hand, my left hand, which is, I'm left-handed, and so you would think that this hand would be worse than my right hand, because I tend to use this hand mostly for like writing and I think a lot of other things. I am a little bit ambidextrous, I guess, because I do use my left hand for writing, but I use my right hand for other things randomly as well. But it's actually my right side that is worse than my left. But so I will post a picture here of what my joint right here looks like before I have the splint on and then afterwards. So the way that this physical therapist had explained it to me was that um, my joint in my thumb right here has been, this is just me resting my hand, that this has been hyperextended for so long that this muscle right here has had to kind of overcompensate for that and become kind of rigid at this point. And it really, she was saying that it really has to do with this joint right here. And so I want to make sure I'm putting the right one on the right hand because I don't want to get these stuck on my fingers. And this is what has been kind of difficult for me. Okay, so she was saying that by keeping it in this, it is going to keep this joint straight and not allow me to hyperextend it, which is going to put less stress right here and hopefully help this area, which is the area that I was having the issue with. And then she ordered another one for this side so that this side doesn't end up like this side. And the problem with this is that when she was trying to size me for it, I think that my fingers were in like a different place with like water retention and everything, because this does not really fit on here very well. I can get it on if I'm washing my hands, but I'm scared that it's going to get stuck on there if I like force it on or leave it on. So this one also feels just kind of off, where even though they both feel uncomfortable, this one is less uncomfortable than this one. So I feel like I might need to get this one resized a little bit. But when I left the appointment a few weeks ago where I was sized for the rings, I almost cried leaving there because I felt really happy that I was finally getting some sort of support for this condition. And, you know, just after a lifetime of having this condition and not knowing it, I finally was at that place and that point where it was like validation, I guess, in that kind of a way. And it was just feeling like, even though I should have had this years ago, having it now is better than never having it at all. And then today when I went to go and pick it up, I also almost cried, or I felt like I wanted to cry because I am not somebody that really wears jewelry. When I was younger, I did a little bit here and there. But for many, many years now, I have not worn earrings. I don't wear rings. I'm just not that kind of a person that really wears a lot of jewelry. So I'm not used to it. And having to wear this is just kind of strange. I was told that I have to keep this on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I cannot take it off. And for me, that's just something that I'm going to have to get used to, and it is going to be a struggle for me. I feel like I don't like the way that it feels. And then I was told if this joint doesn't end up being fixed with this, then I'm going to have to get a splint that goes like a little bit further down and helps this area. So I will share a photo here of my daughter's hand. So that is my sweet girl's hand and her joint. This definitely is a genetic condition. In a lot of ways, for a lot of people, it is genetic. And I am very thankful that I ended up piecing this together and figuring out that this is what I was dealing with. And then in turn, having my daughter do the Baton scale and finding that she also had it, because she was then able to get diagnosed with a hypermobility spectrum disorder and get into physical therapy. And she also had scoliosis and was able to get bracing for her scoliosis. So I'm really, really grateful for that. But if I would not have come across this condition through researching it, it is not something that likely would have been diagnosed at all for either one of us, because there was never a physician or a doctor who ever checked us for this condition or, you know, made us aware of it or anything like that. And to me, that's just really disheartening, because from what I gather, they don't really think about this issue too much because they're more trained to think about more common ailments versus the more rare type of disorders. But from my own personal experience, this is not very rare. I will share a photo here of my brother's hands. So I think that this basically came from my mom's side of the family. My mom was diagnosed with mitochondrial disease and a autoimmune condition called polymyositis, I believe, but she, to my understanding, was never assessed for or diagnosed with hypermobility, but that is where it all came from, was that side of my family. I also find it interesting because when I think back to when I was growing up, I was called double jointed, really flexible. I used to twist myself up into pretzels and turn my hands and my arms and my joints around in all kinds of different ways. And it wasn't just me that would do that, other people in my family would as well. And we all just, I think, thought we were kind of bendy and hyper, or not hypermobile, but just double jointed. And we didn't understand that it was, a connective tissue disorder. And also, there was a lot of neurodivergence within my family. So, my daughter was diagnosed with autism and sensory processing disorder at age 3. I have extended family that was diagnosed with autism. I was diagnosed with ADHD, the inattentive type, and I was late diagnosed autistic level 1. And when I was researching more about this hypermobility, it became like a hyperfixation of mine because I understood that there was a trifecta of comorbid conditions between dysautonomia, mast cell activation syndrome, and Ehlers-Danlos, and then also that there was a really strong link between being neurodivergent, particularly autistic or ADHD, and having hypermobility, which was just fascinating to me. And the fact that my daughter was diagnosed and then had hypermobility as well, um, just so interesting. Just really fascinating. But so I when I was in the middle of my first POTS flare up, that was really bad. It would have been 2022. And 4 months before that, I had COVID. So I thought that I was dealing with POTS because I had long COVID or something like that. And I do think that maybe COVID did trigger it to get worse. However, when I think about symptoms of POTS, I realized that I had POTS years before COVID was ever around. I would say somewhere around 2016, 2015, or 2016, I started to experience a lot of issues with feeling like I was going to pass out. And I would always need to lay down, especially in the summer when it was like really hot. If I was outside or somewhere like that, if I was with friends, I would need to constantly be like, all right, I have to lay down, and I would just have to lay down on the floor. And I remember going out to like eat at restaurants and having to ask for the keys to their car if we all went together so that I could lay in the back seat while they ordered food because I was going to pass out. When I would be driving, sometimes I would pull over because I would get dizzy and didn't feel comfortable driving. I just was experiencing a lot of issues that I think people assumed were anxiety related, but they weren't. In hindsight, I can see it was POTS. Um, and I think that after COVID, it just ended up getting worse for me. But when I was trying to figure out at that moment, what was causing like my tachycardia and all of my symptoms with that, I started to realize that it was connected to other disorders. So then I came across the mast cell activation syndrome, And I pieced together a few years prior to my POTS flare up that I was in, where I broke out in hives all over and was having a lot of like joint issues, just a lot of issues overall. And started to realize, okay, I think I, because of my hives and all of that, also have this mast cell component. And then I came across the hypermobile aspect of it all. And I noticed that there was a Baton scale. I will link that information right here. And so I decided to do the Baton scale. I used to be able to bend my thumb to my forearm like my daughter can do, but over time my joints became so stiff and so bad in this area that I can no longer do that. I can, however, still hyperextend other joints of mine. So my pinkies for sure are very hyperextensible. My hands as well. I can just bend my hands, I guess, in um, a lot of different ways, and so my hands are very bendy. My elbows hyperextend. I can touch my hands flat to the floor. I can do all of the other Baton scale things except for the thumb one, which, I need splints for my thumb, so that probably has something to do with it. But also, there's a skin component to it where you tend to have really stretchy skin. So I've seen people that have like really stretchy skin. My skin is fairly stretchy, and like in all different areas, I can stretch my skin pretty far. And I never knew that this was something. So I went my entire life with this, had no idea, that I had this up until a few years ago when I started to understand this all and put it all together. Um, and so I am thankful that I know that now so that I can, try to help myself the best way that I possibly can. But it does make me sad that I went this long without, the supports that I needed for it. Um, and so that's why I just wanted to talk a little bit about it and share a little bit about it, because I feel like there's probably a lot more people who have this condition than than people even realize out there. Um, and I just know from my personal experience, it is very, very difficult to live with. It's really, it can be completely disabling, because it doesn't just affect, your joints, and it doesn't just make your joints bendy, and it is a collagen issue all throughout your internal organs as well. So the GI issues, the acid reflux, the severe constipation, the IBS symptoms, um, the dysmotility, the gastroparesis, like all of those issues are caused by hypermobility. Um, if you have, hypermobility, all of those issues can be linked to that. Um, and I just, I'm somebody that likes to know the root cause of so many things. Like, why is this happening? What is the root cause of this? And to try to figure out how to best help myself. And so I just have been on a mission to figure out why, what is at the root of it all. And it has been, I guess, just overwhelming in some ways to figure out that this is what it's been. And even with the mast cell component of it, to come to an understanding through researching that mast cells are stored within the connective tissue, and that is often why people with Ehlers-Danlos and hypermobility disorders often have mast cell activation syndrome, as well as because, of the collagen just being affected overall throughout your body. So I am going to try to wear my splints as much as I can. I hope that I can get used to them, and that they're something that ends up helping me in the long run so that I don't need to, I don't know, who knows what would really actually happen if my joints end up getting worse. I guess I don't really know, but I am going to just try my best with this. And yeah, so I thought that I would just share, what was suggested to me, what was prescribed, I guess, and maybe this can be helpful to somebody else. You can order um, off of online. I will link the the company, like the information that I was given. I will link that in the little description box. And yeah, so that is where I'm at right now with this whole aspect of things and what ended up happening for me today. I also will link a couple of documentaries that I ended up watching or listening to when I was discovering that this is what I was dealing with. I found them to be really informative and just interesting, I guess, to watch. So I will link them in case anybody else will find them interesting as well.